Yeah, I mean, there's just this choice to take ownership, which is the thing that I'm most interested in that whole story that we talked about. The number is coincidentally like whatever. There's a book, I think it's 10x is easier than 2x, which honestly I read like the first chapter or two, and it's like the title kind of says it all. Dan Sullivan book, but yeah, whatever it takes to escape that sort of feeling like you're slave to the business, I am in favor of, and I'm happy to be the person who's from the outside shaking some shoulders and saying like, "Are you sure? Are you sure you want 5% revenue growth? That makes you super happy?"
Your business's success depends on relationships. Relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Jake Wells. Jake has started 7 businesses since the age of 23 with triumphs and train wrecks, rounds of investments, and way more pivots than he originally thought possible. He has sold everything from $250,000 software contracts for a real estate tech startup he helped grow from 20 to 200 people, to scooters that he imported from China and meat door to door. Jake was also founding moderator of a peer-to-peer advisory event called House of Genius, where over 7 years he moderated hundreds of roundtable sessions and thousands of entrepreneurs. He helped grow the organization to 20 cities and 3 continents. Having seen behind the curtain at hundreds of companies, Jake saw that the TV version of entrepreneurship, which is shiny and sexy, is a complete fairy tale. The reality is it's hard work and there's no manual. Then Jake's wife, who is a fractional CFO, introduced him to EOS. He read the book Traction and realized that there is actually a manual. His first reaction was to get upset. Where was this 15 years ago? His second reaction was to go all in on an EOS implementer and to help entrepreneurs in a way he wishes he had been helped when he was starting his own businesses. Congrats on helping entrepreneurs in a way you wish you were helped, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Human Connection, I love it. Thank you, Karl, for the wonderful introduction.
You're welcome. So I'm really excited because I think you're a great person to talk about the topic of business with purpose, or business on purpose, not on accident. Because as we talked a little bit before we started recording, there's so often people, when you ask them how they got to where they are, they have this response, oh, it just kind of happened, and that they don't really have a sense of their direction they were taking, and things kind of fell into place the way they did. And given how disruptive the market is right now, it seems more important than ever to have a sense of purpose for the business, where the business is heading, and why your people are making the choices they're making, and not being whims to the kind of reacting to what the market's doing instead of be able to respond. So how do you help people with that, and what are your takes on that?
Reacting versus responding. I like that. There's a big difference in those words. So I've just seen it so many times when I work with leadership teams. If you dig deep enough, and maybe it's the reason we're working together in the first place, right? But there's it's like a victimhood kind of mentality where they're frustrated, they're burnt out. Maybe there's some key people that left or aren't rowing in their direction, and they're just there's this conflict, and we'll end up talking about, what are we going to do this quarter? What are we going to do this year? And it's like a foregone conclusion a lot of times for some people. Like, well, this is how much revenue we're going to make. This is how much profit. There's nothing we can do. And they don't say it out loud. I think that's like the underlying sentiment I've just seen so many times. And this idea of business on purpose, so with intentionality instead of business on accident, for some folks, it has been a bit of a breakthrough and an epiphany, where they can kind of recapture their intentionality and, yeah, not just get what's in store for them.
Yeah, because I think there's like that victim mentality, I think is a great thing to highlight, because especially if the leaders have that mentality, then that is going to permeate throughout the entire organization. If they all have that mentality of there's nothing we can do and we're just kind of at the whims of the market, then it doesn't lead to people taking action and being proactive and really trying to make a difference. And so I can and see how the getting people to snap out of it and start to think more about, okay, yes, things are difficult, yes, things are challenging, but what can we do that is unconventional or maybe just conventional we're not aware of to be proactive and actually have a chance of making things better than they initially seem. And but before you do that, you have to kind of know what your purposes of a business, what you're trying to accomplish, and not be kind of rudderless. And so I imagine that's something that when you're first working with people, you've helped them in the past, is helping figure out, like, okay, what is their purpose? Why are they actually doing what they're doing?
Well, there's something that feels kind of fresh to me. I worked with a client last week, professional services company, and I think it's like a third or fourth session that we're working together. And I credit to the visionary, the founder, where he came in, he'd read a book, he talked to some friends, he was kind of ready personally to reach some new level. And the whole premise of the session was like, well, what are we going to do next week? What are we going to do next, or not next week, but next quarter, next year, 3 years, 10 years? How big are we going to dream here? And he looked at it really matter of fact, and he was like, well, if we just keep doing what we're doing, then we're going to, get 10%, 15% year over year growth, and let's try to earn a profit too. And he just refused it. And this again takes somebody to come in with a kind of openness to the mentality. What he said is like, team, what's impossible? What would be like an asinine, ludicrous, ridiculous proposition? What if, like, in 10 years, what if we were a $50 million company and say they're like one or two now? Like, oh man, that's scary. But the other team was like, we could do that. I'm not that scared. It's like, okay, what about 3 years? What if we become a $50 million company in three? And I don't care. Like, this is just an example, please. Like you don't have to have revenue for the sake of revenue, or make the line go up to be success in life, kind of thing. But what I like about that is it's scary, and you can say, oh, it's a stretch goal, it's a reach goal, we're never going to get it. There's a mentality shift though. I don't propose that. I want to be very clear. Like, don't go have some like asinine goal that's, I'm going to own America, I'm going to be a $75 trillion company. But it's representative of something that's going on inside of saying, I'm not going to just do day-to-day normal. I'm going to do something different. And then the rest of the day was making a plan to back that up. And don't worry, I'm going to check on them every quarter. If if it is too crazy and wild, we can bring it back a little bit. But like, what a moment.
Yeah, I think it kind of, when you were explaining that or sharing that story, which I think is very profound, just for the overall mentality shift and the emotional response people have to that, is the whole idea of that adage of aim for the stars, and if you don't miss, you still hit the moon. If
Right.
you don't aim high, if you don't try, then you're. I think a lot of companies are kind of aiming too low, and they have that. Well, this is the best we can do, and there's no way to improve it. Whereas if you get people to like I said, frame it as, okay, well, what would be crazy, and get them to think that crazy, and then go, okay, now let's build a plan to actually get to that crazy goal. And then, like I said, if you keep checking on every month, and if they don't quite make it there, but they get like halfway there, if it's still twice as what they originally thought they were going to get if they did no change at all, that's still a huge improvement. But it starts with that initial mindset shift of, oh, we're stuck doing our current systems, our current processes, our current goals, our current way of doing business, instead of thinking that, like, I guess also there's a big Brene Brown friend. It's like that daring greatly mindset of, let's go beyond what we think is possible to what, and think like have an audacious goal, BHAG, big hairy audacious goal, all these little other things that people are probably all aware of, but haven't actually applied or haven't applied lately. And that sort of inspiring people with that purpose of let's do something crazy um, is, I think, a mindset that is a rare one to find these days, which is unfortunate. I think it's also like ties
Yeah.
into. I think there's. I had someone on the show recently who was talking about innovation and how people have too much information. Like it's better to be innovative when you don't know as much about a situation, or you don't know too much about the market. Because now
Yeah.
there's so much data that people are like, oh, based on all these like this data, like that's all here. We know so much that here's what we're like kind of limited by it. Where if you are
Yeah.
coming at it from, let's not worry about it, let's go with like what's the biggest thing we can possibly do and reverse engineer that, and then you really find some innovative solutions that move the needle, and you're not kind of confined by the overwhelm of data and all the things saying that what you're dreaming is impossible.
Yeah. I mean, there's just this choice to take ownership, which is the thing that I'm most interested in that whole story that we talked about. The number is coincidentally like whatever. There's a book, I think it's 10x is easier than 2x, which, honestly, I read like the first chapter or two, and it's like the title kind of says it all. Dan Sullivan book. But yeah, whatever it takes to escape that sort of feeling like you're slave to the business, I am in favor of, and I'm happy to be the person who's from the outside shaking some shoulders and saying like, are you sure? Are you sure you want 5% revenue growth? That makes you super happy. You're absolutely stoked. That's the thing that you want. And it very well might be. If it's a cottage business, if it's a lifestyle business, absolutely fantastic. Like maybe you judge your success by working 20 hours a week instead of 60, something like that. And you just maintain the same revenue. That's a huge win. Like fantastic. But like, I guess I want to be a force of making people say what they really think out loud. Maybe thinking about it and then say it. And then if you've got a team around you that doesn't get scared by that and they can raise their hand, you'd be surprised. People are thirsty for some vision. Like,
Yeah, I think just having that, you think people kind of feel trapped by the business, or they're like smothered by it because it becomes this obligation more than the initial passion they had to start it. I think reminding them, helping them like find their purpose again and what they want to do with it, how it makes it work for them to make their lives fulfilling. So like you said, if it, like the whole lifestyle business thing where you're not trying to exponential growth, but maybe cutting how much time it's taking you to achieve that same result by a third and still maintain that's like the same margin. Is it a huge win? But helping people understand like that's what they actually want this thing to do and the impact they want to have, or like coming up with other KPIs for the impact they want to have with their business and working towards that, but at least having some sense of purpose is a huge change from things being an obligation or a drudgery, or like that victim mentality, to okay, we actually have a way forward. There's a common direction we can all be rowing in, and for leaders to have that, like it makes achieving that 10x growth or that big result a lot easier than if you just try and play it safe and stick within the box that you're currently in.
yeah, and then honestly, like, as we're talking about it, this is scary stuff and it's vulnerable stuff. And my method for this is to demand an answer to some fundamental questions. Like, look me in the eye and tell me that you actually want to be here. Do you want to do this business? You don't have to. What if you didn't have to? Do you want out? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to grow it? Like, what's the point? What are we doing here? So it gets a little bit existential. Um, I studied psychology and philosophy back in the day, trying to figure myself out, and I found that was a good groundwork for the many businesses I've had since. But like, get real with me, and I want the leaders to be there too, saying, are you just here for a paycheck? I want to ask all the questions that people are generally scared of asking, and it's not that scary, honestly. When people step up and say the answer, like, oh, that's what I expected. I thought that that was the case, or you might be surprised too. But if we can't have that level of candor with one another, we're just like playing this fake game. So that's been my approach anyway for the last 5 years as an EOS implementer, is getting real with folks in that way. And I'm invited to do so. I'm not always invited, in which case I'm not working with them. But
Yeah, and I think that those sorts of questions that require being vulnerable and actually being mindful about for the people who are there, why they're there, why they're showing up, and what they're looking to get from it is really important, because before people can connect with their teams or their clients or their families, they have to be in connection with themselves and really understand who they are and what they care about. And I just don't think enough people do that in general. Like you mentioned, the whole idea of kind of coasting through business. Most people kind of coast through their careers, their lives, and their relationships. They don't really analyze and assess and get in touch with who they are as a human being. And so I can see how those conversations you have with your clients can be difficult and uncomfortable, but when they kind of say those inner feelings out loud and the rest of the team goes, oh yeah, I feel the same way, or like, oh, that makes sense based on how you've been behaving, then there's this kind of you're acknowledging the elephant in the room that's been probably weighing down the team and slowing things down. But once you are able to address it and either make the changes needed or at least be able to operate from that level of transparency and connection, that it makes the rest of the process you work with them on figuring out like what the real goals are, what the changes of the processes and procedures need to be, or the personnel to make this happen and break out of the kind of stagnation they're in. That makes it way easier once they're going to get that better sense of actually what their personal stake is in the business. Because that once you know what the personal connection is, then it makes all the work feel less like drudgery and less like an obligation, more like, okay, this is my purpose, is to be here doing this thing. And that is really inspiring for them.
yeah, and as we're talking about it, it just sounds so much like personal development. And I mean, it is just manifested in somebody's business. I found that the people that I work best with have done some kind of personal work. Like they're familiar with therapy or couples therapy or reading books, or maybe they like Tony Robbins, or like fill in the blank for somebody. Because it seems like, gosh, as I'm thinking about it now, most of my clients are heavily into some sort of personal growth aside from business, and we're kind of almost bringing that to the leadership team and the yeah, the business.
But yeah, I mean, I've heard.
I do call myself an undercover business therapist, unlicensed, back alley.
Yes. Well, I think it's very much true that if a business is going to grow, the leader has to grow with it as a person.
Yeah,
And if the leader is not willing to grow, then they are unfit to lead the business, because it's not going to scale more than they are personally going to scale
yeah.
or grow themselves. And so it makes sense.
Unless they can get out of their way. I mean, they don't have to grow up; they can move out of the way
If they step aside, let someone
for their
else
own
lead,
good. Yeah,
then yeah. But if the leader is not willing to grow their own skill set, to grow as a person, then the businesses, they're going to be like forever like the bottleneck to the business's growth. So it makes sense that for someone like within your expertise of with EOS, that the clients you work with the most and they get the most value are the ones that are already investing in their own growth, because that mindset of improvement is what's needed to be a leader these days. If you like, the minute you think, okay, we got it all figured out, we can start coasting, it's like, well, you just lost the game, because things are constantly moving and changing. You got to keep growing with it, otherwise you're hosed.
totally. And we do use a structure and a framework. It's called EOS. That's my favorite one. I'm an EOS implementer. That provides kind of the skeleton and the system structure. But I'd say that's half of what I see myself doing. The other half is facilitating the hard conversations that folks probably aren't going to have unless somebody from the outside comes in to kind of host those and make a safe space. Or I don't want to say it's like a therapy session, because like therapy for just therapy, who cares? Like, or maybe that's fine personally. Like, yes, go do that, but it has to be attached to some kind of results, some value driven outcomes. So there's this line and this dance where we have to do both at once. Like, great, let's have breakthroughs and such. Let's also win, and let's define what winning looks like, and let's have a good game plan to actually get there.
Yeah, I love that that perspective on like in a personal development and working on it, but having that goal oriented in mind, so you know if the work you're doing is actually paying off, because it makes a big difference. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Jake. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Jake, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.